officially to the very first European Academy of Wind Energy and We Do Wind diversity webinar. Thank you very much to everyone for coming along. The title of this webinar today is Diversity, Equity and Inclusion, Nice to Have or a Necessity. And we're very honoured to have Paul Walton here, who's going to introduce himself later and talk to us about his large experience in the area. I just want to introduce myself first. For those of you who don't know me, I think most of you know me, but my name's Sarah Barber and I lead the wind energy program at the Eastern Switzerland University of Applied Sciences. I'm also founder and president of the Swiss Wind Energy R&D Network, which aims to bundle Swiss innovation for the global wind energy market. And since last year, I also chair the new diversity committee of the European Academy of Wind Energy. And I just need to find my mouse on the right screen. Sorry a second. Okay. And so today, I just want to do a very quick introduction to what we're doing here, who we are and why we're here. And then I want to invite Paul to speak. I've changed the agenda slightly. I haven't changed the amount of time, Paul. You've still got the same amount of time. It's just 5 minutes later. But the main part, after Paul has spoken, is really going into some group discussions where we'll split you up randomly into groups. And we've got 3 questions that we want you to answer. And then we'll have a quick presentation of those results and then define some next steps. So is everybody okay with that? Did I miss anything? Has anybody got any questions or any technical or administrative problems? No? Sabine has put her thumb up. That's good. So just quickly about who we are. The European Academy of Wind Energy Diversity Committee is committed to improving DEI in wind energy science by providing tools to help people themselves improve DEI, B, increasing the visibility of underrepresented groups, and C, acting as positive role models by improving DEI within the Academy and within our own organisations. And so I'm the chairperson. We have a team here. Some of the team is here today. So Jim, Sarah and Julia, do you want to just quickly wave? Can't see Julia, but I can see Sarah and Jim. So they're responsible for this as well as me. But as well as the Academy, we also have a second organisation or a second project called We Do Wind. And We Do Wind is a ecosystem or a platform to bring together people in wind energy to solve the most important problems, but in an inclusive way. So anybody can sign up from anywhere around the world. And we have a space, we have different spaces on different topics. And one of our spaces is called Diversity in Wind Energy Science. So we meet once a month and we try to talk about how to improve diversity in wind energy. Actually, not wind energy science, wind energy. And our mission is to collect and analyse a wide range of inputs, experiences and ideas from the whole wind energy community through the We Do Wind platform and through webinars like this one. And so our results are actually going into the diversity committee, so we can actually use the diversity committee to do real things, to things that people actually want. So it's really important to have these webinars. It's really important for you to come and tell us your opinion and tell us what you think, because we actually want to use this to guide what we're doing. And so We Do Wind, as I said, it's run by the Swiss Wind Energy R&D Network, and it's an ecosystem which is bringing together people, data and solutions. You can find out more on our website here. I can put the link into the chat when I stop talking, and you can sign up here and actually contribute by coming once a month if you want. And so why are we doing it? So basically we need diversity. I mean, the human race needs diversity to survive. Humans are diverse and equality between them is the basis of a fair society, which is also reflected in the Sustainable Development Goals 5 and 10. And it's been proven that diverse teams are more productive and happier. I've got some references at the bottom. But underrepresentation and discrimination still exists, even when it's unintentional. Just some examples, 92% of EU tech funding goes to male teams and only 1% to black founders. 29% of worldwide management roles are taken by women, 10% by women of colour, percent of engineers in the US are women. And then we also have this thing called a gender data gap, which is basically a lot of things in the world are designed by men for men. Medicine is a very large example of that, but also public areas, public transport. The resistance to fighting underrepresentation is growing. We've still got lots to do, and honestly, I believe that every one of us can contribute. And I think the energy transition is a perfect opportunity to do that. We have to make structural change for the energy transition anyway, so why don't we use that as a chance? But also, we have an increased demand for more workforce, but also for different skills. So let's use that as a chance to become more diverse. So yeah, that's basically why we're doing what we're doing. I want to quickly present you the results of the survey. So everyone who signed in, all 40 people, got asked these 3 questions. So my organisation, my immediate team, my private life is already diverse on a scale of 1 to 5. I think more diversity would be beneficial in these 3 areas. And my organisation, immediate team, friendship group is already making efforts to improve. So we had 40 participants from 20 nationalities. We had 41% male and 59% female. And for the first question, the results basically show, just look at the colours. Dark red means strongly disagree, and dark green means strongly agree. Yellow is neutral. And so we can basically see that your perceptions were that about 40% of organisations are very diverse. The private life seems to be perceived as more diverse than professional life, and the immediate team more diverse than the overall organisation. That can't be true for every single team in an organisation, but maybe from the ones that you come from. And then the second question, I think more diversity would be beneficial. So again, your perceptions, the strong majority thinks that diversity would be more beneficial in general. The largest need is for organisations, the smallest for private life. And it shows the opposite trends to the previous question. So where we thought the areas were more diverse, we said they needed less work. It kind of makes sense. And then the last question is my organisation making efforts to improve DEI? And so your perceptions here were basically that the strong majority of organisations are making efforts. It gets less as we move to the right. And so our conclusion is really that new activities that we carry out, things that we try, should focus on immediate teams, because that seems to be where less effort, the attempts of the organisation are maybe not trickling far enough to the teams. And there's no disagree for the friendship group. We're not quite sure about the data for the friendship group because it's very subjective, so we're not 100% sure about that question. But anyway, so that was basically a conclusion. We're not going to use that for any scientific study or anything, but it's just to give you an idea of what people have been saying. I would now, 2 minutes late, pass on to Paul, and yeah, say welcome. Do you want to share your screen and get started?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Sarah. Let's see if I can share my screen here now. Just a second. Oh, no. I'm failing to share my screen here. Let's see if I can do this. Okay. Does that show? Yeah. Sarah?
Yeah, it's fine now. Sorry, I was talking, but my microphone was off. Yeah.
Okay, so if the screen's showing, I'll go from here. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for the invite. My name's Paul Walton. I'm from the University of York in the UK. I'm a chemist by trade, professor of chemistry here at the university, but I've been doing gender equality work now for 20 odd years. So And I've got this little, I've got several talks I give on gender equality, and this is one of them. And I've spoken all over the world on the matter, and I've picked up quite a bit of information about gender equality, which I'm very happy to share with you in the discussion as I go along. I thought I'd start by telling you a little bit of history, which you'll see puts what I'm about to say in context. And I'm going to start with this. I don't know if any of you know this painting at all. It's in the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art. The guy sitting down there is Antoine Lavoisier, who's thought to be the father of my subject, chemistry. In fact, many of you might have heard of him at school. He's the guy who kind of worked out the ratio of gases to show that they were discrete molecules. And the person in the middle of the picture standing up is Marie Lavoisier, his wife. What's interesting about this picture, which by the way is by the great French artist David, is that Marie is the subject of the painting. And in fact, if you look at Antoine, who's sitting down, you kind of see that he's looking up for her for advice and guidance. And the reason I show this picture is that it's done in 1788, and it signals that Marie was almost certainly the scientist behind Lavoisier's discoveries, and that the artists are trying to communicate that, and that really that history perhaps should rethink not only Antoine's but Marie Lavoisier's role in the scientific discoveries that they made. Now, of course, that was 1788 and way back, and of course, at that time, women scientists could not be recognised for the work they did. In fact, she would probably have lost her head if she'd claimed the credit for the work. And surely things have improved since then. Well, they have. And here are some data showing each of these little set of data here. If I don't know if you can see my mouse, but each of these little set of data here shows for a particular set of countries or a country the growth of female faculty in universities. So the left-hand most column is 1960 going all the way through to 2017. Those are the most recent data I have. And I picked some various different countries here. Here's Spain with good increase there. There's Sweden that started off quite high back in the 70s. This is probably, so it's kind of plateaued off a little bit there, interestingly. A lot of progress in the United States, which now is almost at 50-50 in its faculty. Here's Russia, which is a second world country, has always had employment practices which have tried to make the most of the workforce. Is actually slightly above 50-50. And here's the United Kingdom. We've been through a big expansion, although also kind of tailing off a little bit. But overall, the message is that within universities and in research, there's been essentially a feminization of research in universities over the last 50 years or so ago. And from these data, all would appear to be heading in the right direction, and certainly better than 1788. So, you know, where are we with it all? And does research have a problem? We seem to be heading in the right direction. Well, the answer is yes, and it's very clearly yes. And I'd like to just go through the evidence base behind why that is the case. I'm going to start here. This is, and you'll notice I'm trying to pick for some publications which have appeared recently, but they all tell the same story. This is actually from Nature Biotech from last year. This is a study done on PhD students that graduated in 1995 with their PhDs, and the researchers charted the salary of these people following their PhD. So on the x-axis here is the number of years following PhD, and you see at year 5 after PhD they started to chart the pay. On the right is industry, on the left is academia or research. So you notice two things. First of all, industry's paid more than academia, which is no fun. We also notice that in industry, the pay rates of men and women are basically the same. And in fact, as you progress through the system, men are paid a little bit more than women in the first part of their career, but those pay rates converge to something that's pretty close to a pay gap of 0 20 years after a PhD. And it really shows that certainly in this industry that men and women have roughly equal opportunities when it comes to getting on in the place of work. On the left, however, is academia and research. And you notice there is a clear problem. You notice that men and women in the early days are paid roughly the same amount, but between 10 to 15 years after PhD, so that would be mid-30s, the pay gap opens up quite significantly in the favour of men, to the point that 20 years after PhD, so mid-40s, early 50s maybe, the pay gap is significant. And this is unique to our profession, is that we seem to find a way of undervaluing women and overvaluing men, which generate this pay gap. Now, this pay gap is, of course, a factor of many things, one of which is differential promotion, one of which is men occupying the higher positions, one of which is perhaps women not taking up the positions available, but most of all, it'll recognize it's the climate in which we work which causes this separation. So there is a problem, and there is a current problem for men and women within research and within universities. The other problem that we have is that harassment in science is real. And I didn't used to show this slide, but I've started showing it more often nowadays. This was published in Science in 2017. And in particular for laboratory sciences or experimental sciences, studies of women in academia report that more than half have experienced some form of harassment sometime in their career. And it's a shocking statistic, isn't it? If when you consider that, is that that we allow and permit harassment against women in science to this day. And that remains largely unchecked, and that of course this has led to things like the Me Too movement, and most recently the movie Picture of Scientists, where there's some very heart-rending tales of how women have been treated by their advisors and their research groups, to the extent that it really shocked a few people. So why do we have a problem? Well, there are all sorts of reasons, but I draw on this paper from Science in 2015. Where the researchers did the following experiment. They went to university campuses. So these are researchers that you and I would work with on a daily basis. And they asked the following question. They said, in which subjects are the most brilliant people? In which subjects do you think the most brilliant people are? And then they split that up into arts and humanities at the bottom here, and science and mathematics at the top here. So if you look at the arts and humanities, I should say that the x-axis here, as you get a greater score, this is where people think the most brilliant people are. So we think the philosophers, and that's people on university campuses, are the most brilliant people, and you could even identify with that. Whereas if you're an educationalist or a psychologist, unfortunately, you're not thought to be very able at all. When it comes to science and maths, you notice that we think the mathematicians are the most brilliant, closely followed by the physicists. And then on the other side of things, there's the earth scientists, the neuroscientists, and the molecular biologists, and the chemists in the middle. Now, maybe those little kind of qualitative things are not a surprise. But then what the researchers did is they correlated the evidence of expectations of brilliance, this is what this axis is called, with the number of women in those subjects. And you see that in each case, there's a positive correlation showing that we instinctively, and this of course is implicit bias, instinctively associate brilliance with subjects in which there are more men. And this notion of brilliance and where it comes from and ability, particularly in academia, is pretty deeply set in the academic and research mindset. Even up to the modern day, and this underpins a lot of the bias that we see. So, can we deal with it? Well, the answer is yes, to a certain extent. And on my last slide, I'll mention a few kind of tricks. But what are the benefits of pursuing diversity, and equality and inclusion? And Sarah's already mentioned one or two, but there's some really good evidence now, and the evidence base is making it very clear. I picked this up today of all days. This is Nature 2022. It's published last week. This is an editorial, the title of which, Gender Equality Will Enhance Research Around the World. Now, that's quite a statement, isn't it? And if it appears in Nature, one would expect that it is evidence-based, and it is evidence-based. We now have really good evidence to show that if organizations pursue gender equality against the things I've just mentioned on the previous slide, it will have a significant and long-lasting benefit, not only to the workplace culture, but as I'll show in the next slide, also the ability of that organization to do research. Picked out a quote from this editorial: employees at gender diverse institutions tend to be more satisfied, less likely to leave, and demonstrate better productivity, innovation, and decision making. And in fact, actually, the key word there is innovation. There's really strong evidence to show that gender balanced organizations are far more innovative and creative, and are better being able to deal with the research challenges that they face. Now, that may be self-evident, and possibly talking to people here today that would know that. But my comment is the evidence base now is very clearly showing that that is the case, and that there really shouldn't be an excuse for any organization to tolerate gender inequality in its institution. I might add at this point that the evidence base for academia and research has been late coming to the party. There's been lots of evidence from industry and commerce that gender diverse workforces and executive boards are critical if the organization is to do well. But the evidence for research in universities has been lacking until about the last 5 or so years. But that evidence is saying exactly the same as we see in industry, is that gender equality and gender diverse workforces really do make a difference. This paper was published again in Nature 2018, the title of which is The Power of Diversity. I quite like the strapline there. Being inclusive gives teams a competitive edge in science. It also happens to be the right thing to do. My guess is that most of us here today are here because we think it's the right thing to do, and that was a lot of my own motivation. But it also is now, as I said on the previous slide, there's really strong and clear evidence to show that it gives us a competitive edge to be the best at what we do. And perhaps that's best illustrated by this paper here. You can find it on the preprint at the bottom. There's also a report in this journal here, Angewandte Chemie, International Edition, 2021. What did the researchers do? Well, they took 1 million research papers, and of course that's now a large data set, published in the US, UK, Canada, and Australia. I don't know why they picked those countries, they just did. And they looked at the authorships on those papers, looked at the co-authors, and gave each of those papers an index according to the age diversity of the authors, the ethnic diversity of the authors, the gender diversity of the authors, and the affiliation diversity. That's where they come from. And then they plotted that against a metric, right? It happens to be the average 5-year citation count. I don't think it really matters. It's a performance metric. And by the way, a performance metric often used by organizations judging either individuals or institutions for the quality of their research. And what did the researchers find? Well, they find in every single instance, gender, age, ethnicity, that the diversity index is positively correlated with the performance of those papers out there in the big wide world. And all those correlations are positive, and some of them weaker than others, but some of them stronger than others. You notice here, ethnic diversity is pretty strongly correlated with the performance of the paper or the research and its impact, presumably, in the wider world. And gender is pretty well correlated as well. And so the evidence base is just now abundantly clear. And let me put it the other way around. For organizations that don't tackle inequalities as they arise within the organization, for whatever source that may come, those organizations, the research will say, will end up not performing as well as their competitors. So if I had a recipe over the 20 years, what have I learned that makes a difference? Well, here are the key things. First of all, data should be disaggregated into male and female or ethnicity or whatever dimension you're looking at, and it should be widely and openly reported. We should be able to see the data on where potentially there is inequality. Secondly, critically, we need internal and external leadership on these matters, particularly people who got control of budgets or of management and management responsibilities, to make this a thing, about the organization. And without leadership, then we just don't get much progress. Thirdly, you often hear that pursuing equality will be met by a drop in research quality or a drop in the ability of an organization. The evidence base says the opposite, and therefore it's right to have high research expectations or high expectations of staff when they're working within a diverse workforce. Fourthly, and I think this is my main message today, is that we get together a lot and talk about gender equality or equality in general, but actually what we should be doing is we should be accessing the social science research that's out there. Now there really is a lot to inform and to guide our gender equality practices. In fact, I would even go as far to say is that we should stop meeting and just talking about our experiences, as valuable as that may be, without the social science research to back up what we say. And then any interventions that we bring or any initiatives that we bring should be based on that research. And I would say the work we've done here at York over the last 20 years, a lot of it has been based on the research, and that's where we've seen progress. And then the last piece here is, let's keep the debate alive. This is why it's so good to have kind of meetings like this, is that by having the debate, we bring it front and center, and also we can inform each other and also offer to those people who may doubt what we're doing the opportunity to be involved in the discussion. So that's it. I think my time's up. Sarah, I'm going to stop sharing now and back over to you.
All right, great. Thank you very much, and thank you for the concrete recommendations, which I have now copied and pasted into the Jamboard. You can see the Jamboard screen, right? Yeah. I know some of you might have some questions as well for Paul, but I'm just going to move on with the program because otherwise we're going to run out of time. If you've got some, please write them down. Please put them in the chat, or even ask him if you happen to be in his group, and we might have some time at the end as well. So the next part of the program is we're going to split you randomly into breakout rooms, and the task is to answer these three questions on my screen now. So the first question is, how can we use Paul's experience and ideas for wind energy? 2, what are the advantages and disadvantages of even making this effort to improve DEI? The title of the webinar is it worth the effort? And then the third thing, what do you think you could personally contribute to the effort? And for those of you who don't know about using Jamboard, if you click on the link, you should see the same as what I see. And there's some different screens. So at the top here, you can flick through. I've just copied and pasted Paul's recommendations in so that you can see them. And then we've got 1 page per group. So you're going to land in a breakout group, which is going to have a number. And you should then go to the page which corresponds to your group. And the 3 questions are written here already. And what you can do is that you can copy and paste this blue one. So if you just use Control-C and Control-V, you double click, you can edit it and press save, and you can make notes like that. You can write your names here. If you double click on here and write your names. And I'm not sure if there are enough. I think I made 5, so it could be that we need a couple more. I have to see how many groups get formed. And then at the end, we'll just do a quick presentation of each group, like literally in 1 minute per group. Has anybody got any questions about that? Everybody ready? So if I do 5 groups, I'm going to get 3 people per room. Maybe I'll do 4 groups. If I do 4 groups, we're going to get 3 to 4 people per room. And then I'm going to call you back at, I'm going to call you back at 10 to, or maybe just before. So you're going to have 20 minutes, or just a bit less than 20 minutes to discuss. So you should get a notice somewhere saying, please join room 2 or please join room 3. And you should click on that. And then you'll get brought back automatically. So I'm going to press create rooms now. Sometimes it takes a bit of time in Microsoft Teams until it's done that. Make sure you copy the link now, because I don't think it's available to you afterwards. Okay, now it's made the rooms. I'm just gonna, if Sarah and if people from the diversity committee, Sarah and Jim and Julia and me end up in the same room, we're probably gonna leave the room and share ourselves out amongst you. But don't get offended if we do that. So I'm going to press go now, and it should work. still saying it's opening, so I think it still needs a bit of time. Well, now people are leaving. Okay.
Hi, Sarah.
What happened to you?
So there was only one person in the group, and she didn't seem to have any microphone or camera, so the discussion was a little bit stilted.
And you were in 4, huh?
Yeah.
And what were you in, Paul?
I have no idea. The screen just went blank.
That's a shame. There's some more people coming back now. Let's see what happens. Juliana. Okay, let me just think of one problem at a time. So, Jim, you were apparently with Sabina, and she spoke earlier.
Okay, because the only other person who came up was Emma.
Yeah. And she couldn't speak.
Well, she didn't respond at all when I said hello and spoke to her.
So, I mean, I could just put. Okay, I could just put you in a different room. Let me just put you in a different room.
Okay.
Let me just see what rooms might need your help. But I'm going to put you in room 1 because Paul's supposed to be in room 1 as well, and he's not. So maybe it's good if you go to 1. So I'm going to press assign. Oh, he's gone already. And now we've got to work out what to do with you, Paul.
Maybe you and I can chat, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, oh, Jim's come back. What happened?
So I ended up going back into room 4 to close that down. Do you want to try putting me again? Because it might be that it just confused it. Trying to be.
I can't do anything right now. It's trying to do something and not succeeding. But I mean, I can close the other room if nobody's doing anything in it. But yeah, I mean, we could. I'm guessing the other people are okay, which is why they haven't got back to us. I don't know. But yeah, we could maybe just talk.
Yeah.
Instead of not, I actually already started creating a fifth board because I was going to do it myself anyway. So I may as well, you can see my screen anyway, can't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to do group 5, and I just copied the recommendations from Paul actually, and I was just starting to think about it. So maybe we can just do that together. I'm really shocked about the difference actually in between academia and industry. Yeah.
Academia's got a particular problem. And that's why I put that slide up, is that we don't like to think we're progressive, but actually we're not.
It's interesting. I think it's really interesting because it's like, for me, you need to do actually more. You'd think the scientific people would have more access to the existing research. So you say, okay, learn social science research, okay, share data, you'd think that the scientific people would be able to do that more, but maybe not outside of their area, huh?
Yeah, part of it, I guess, is that academics feel they're kind of their own entity and don't respond to management and always want to do their own thing. I suspect there's also an element that scientists don't think much of social sciences or don't speak the same language.
Yeah, I mean, we are terrible in my environment. It's terrible. As soon as you say the word emotion or social or anything, they completely go crazy. But okay, but what's the what could we actually do? I mean, I started to write down we should actually do some more, like some search, actually get the okay, we need to get the data if we want to share it, right?
Yeah, I think it depends where you are as a group of people. I mean, the first question I always ask is, are people aware of the problem, or are they not aware? And then and the normal antidote to that is to get the data and show people what the issue is. Like the pay data. Some people would be genuinely shocked by that. Then the next question is, do people, if people are aware, how do they explain it? Do they say it's a woman's problem, rather than a society, rather than an organizational problem? And if that's the case, and I'm kind of posing you the questions, you have to answer them, for your organization. Then some leadership's needed on implicit bias and expectations and the like, which is very difficult. Because there's a process which we go through as human beings there, which usually takes several years for people to kind of come to an arrival point that they understand their own biases. And most social sciences would tell you it takes about 10 years to go through that process, interestingly enough.
To get people to think about, to realize, I mean, if I just take my environment as an example, I mean, even using saying the word emotion or they're engineers and they do electrical engineering and or mechanical engineering, and if you start talking about like introspection or thinking about even communication, it's like crazy for them,
Yeah, I wouldn't say the scientists here are much different to the people you've just described. I think perhaps what it is, and there's some interesting work done on this about how academics are trained to think and that are expected to think, which is this dependence on their own wit rather than anything else, and wanting to unpick and question other people's data. Doesn't mean to say that they're not emotional, right? And that doesn't mean to say that they can't respond to emotion. It's just that they come at it in a different way, and I think understanding that is important. I know for scientists here that they have responded with their emotions on things and understood that there's an emotional side of it.
I've got a leadership workshop which I run, which is called Engineer to Leader, and it's about exactly doing that. But the difficulty is actually getting people to want to do that. I mean, in my experience, my difficulty has been people not even wanting to do it, like not even realizing that they need to do that, and it's kind of a very similar thing, or scared of it, Yeah,
it takes time. It takes time for people to kind of come over to the fold, and the normal breakdown of people is about 20% of any organization will be committed to equality without any motivation. 10% will be dead against, regardless. There's nothing you can do. But the people in the middle are the interesting ones. And initially they'll be resistant, and initially they'll be questioning, but over time they come over to the fold. And there's a tipping point when a certain percentage of the organization is committed to equality. It's about 50% or so. That then it gains this momentum that you're after. That's all pretty well understood, actually, from a kind of psychology point of view. It's certainly our experience that that's the case. It just takes time.
So, as concrete, we should probably move on to the other questions as well. Now, I've written, do some wind energy science related surveys and share the results. Use this in order to increase awareness.
Yeah.
Then have some leadership support on. I've written on unconscious bias, but I really just mean on everything related to whatever introspection, And then I've put time. Is there something else that's missing from that list?
Just be aware that unconscious bias training, awareness raising is known not to work.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that the only way to do it is kind of self-police it and even watch out for it and observe it. Bringing in trainers doesn't have any significant effect at all. So,
but to self-police it, it requires at least one person to do that, or to know what it is, and to
yeah.
I
mean, there are various mechanisms of self-policing. Those are pretty well known. My point is, it's a day-to-day effort over a period of time that gets people thinking as a matter of course about implicit bias. And even then, it doesn't disappear. Even then, it needs continual work.
Because there's an external person coming in, it's just like people don't adopt it because they're just like, well, you might be right, but I don't really care, or I don't even believe you because you're a crazy social scientist and I'm an engineer. Or
well, there's a bit of that, but there's some skilled presenters who don't fall foul of those particular things. But even a believable presenter that has reached across the credibility gap can educate people, but within 15 minutes, I think that's the kind of time most people have forgotten about having to correct for unconscious bias, and that and then the trouble is they then think that they're corrected for unconscious bias.
Oh yeah, because they've been to one training. Yeah.
That's
I
right.
mean, I'm the sort of person who notices things like that all the time and actually says things. But I'm the only person, and I'm the annoying one, right? And you get perceived as this annoying one, and then no one else wants to be like you, so no one else does it. And then I would actually quite like to know how to deal with that myself in order to actually my organization is very challenging, and I would actually quite like to know how I can have a more positive effect rather than always being I try not to do it in an annoying way, but how do you actually?
Any intervention leads to resentment. The question is not whether it does lead to resentment, it's how much resentment it leads to.
Yeah.
And there is a line. You can make the thing go backwards by creating too much resentment.
Yeah.
My advice has always been not to rush at it, is to see it as a 10-year game where, sorry, Sarah, where you just keep going at it. You keep going at it. And eventually, and it's a combination of two things. One is rules and policies and procedures, just having posters and things written down. About half the people respond to that, and the other half will respond to emotion one way or the other. And you go through this process of kind of denial, and then resistance, and then fatigue, and then eventually acceptance with people.
I've got I've created resentment among some people, but some people I created awareness as well, and especially my boss has reacted positively, even though he doesn't do it right every time. So for example, he then got people to vote on whether the word inclusion should be included in our mission or not, and it was a majority vote where I was the only female, and it got voted down. And it's just like, no, this is exactly what the whole point. And I did tell him, and he was like, oh, I didn't realize that, sorry, but at least he's on my side. So.
Yeah, and so you're describing exactly the type of dynamic goes on, is that people slowly come over one by one, and that you eventually get there. But it's a marathon rather than a sprint.
One of the challenges along the way is that people think it's something that someone else does. So probably in your organisation, Sarah, you're the kind of diversity police.
Of course, yeah.
So no one else needs to think about it because you'll do it. I don't know how to get out of that.
How do you get out of that? Go one by one, slowly.
Yeah.
So there's some well-trodden paths here that people have been down before that know the way.
One of the things that we were trying to push in a bid that we put in was kind of diversity is for everyone. It's not something that someone else does.
Yeah.
And get it as kind of core business rather than something that you have to do, the last thing you think about when you're about to submit a proposal or something like that.
Yeah.
To me, right? So I wanted to put diverse inclusion in the main mission statement, and it got thrown off into the ethics, and I was fighting against that because I didn't.
Yeah, you have to take some losses along the way, I'm afraid, but you're doing all the right things. What would I say? I would say patience. Hard as that is to swallow, patience turns out to be the key.
Yeah. I guess one of the challenges there is whether you can tell whether you're making progress. It's you could sit there and do nothing, bit very patiently, and that's not going to achieve anything. It's whether if you're busting your gut to try and make progress, how you know whether you are doing the right things.
The funny thing is that I had to. No, I'm not going to say that now. This recording's being recorded. I'm not going to say that. It's all right. No, I noticed that it's doing something because my boss changed the rules or actually made some rules for recruiting by asking me to make a list. I mean, obviously, I don't really know the answer that well, but I know better than he does. And now he's put it on the website, but no one's going to use it. That's the thing now. So he said, yeah.
I don't know. You might be surprised. Some people may well use it.
People might use it. Yeah.
I think you can't expect everyone to use it, but
no,
a quarter of people would probably use it. You'd be surprised. It's certainly the type of thing you need in place, but that has to be coupled also with persuading people just as human beings to do it as well.
Oh, okay, we need to go back now. I just gave a 3-minute warning 3 minutes ago. So I'm gonna close all these rooms and get everybody to come back.
Okay. By the way, Sarah, I do have to finish bang on at 2.
Oh, me too. I've got another meeting that starts at 2. I actually have to finish 1 minute before, so don't worry about that. I've got another meeting with 20 people in to coordinate afterwards. Okay, did everyone get ripped back into the big group in the middle of a conversation?
Yes, indeed.
So now we've lost the people who couldn't talk or didn't want to talk, I guess. Hi, Helena, by the way. I didn't see you before.
No, I joined a little bit later, but just on time to participate in the discussion.
All right, great.
Thanks.
Okay, we've got the core people who are still here, the hardcore people. So now we've got 9 minutes and we've got 5 groups. So I'm going to set a 1-minute timer for each group to quickly just tell me what you talked about, even if you didn't manage to document it. I'll try to make some notes. So was anybody in group 1? Oh, group 1 was the one that Jim was supposed to be in. Okay, group 1 didn't exist. Oops. Group 2, okay, I can see that you've made notes. So 1 minute.
Yeah, I think we started with just saying that we find it interesting that Paul was talking about that it is important to have high research expectations. And how do we couple this with female and male coded language when it comes to job ads? Because if you want to have high research expectations, you also can state that in the job ad, but how to do that without scaring women away or having too low expectation for that. So it's a bit of a phrasing. What more did we talk about? Yeah, we talked about also the leaky pipeline and that we have this problem with higher up you go, the lesser females you have in advanced positions. I don't think we really got to answer the questions, but.
It doesn't really matter as long as you talked about something useful. Students tend to be.
Just quick comment on that. High research expectations overlap with teamwork towards research objectives rather than single investigator, single project. So that's the way I would frame adverts.
Great, thanks.
Good point.
Can we write that down? So it's here. It's like teamwork. What am I writing here? In order to was that connected to the high research expectations topic?
Yeah.
So teamwork can be used as a way of promoting diversity in order to improve research, doesn't it?
Right. So teamwork goes hand in hand with high research expectations and diversity. As the evidence base shows.
Okay, next group. Group 3? Who was group 3?
I was in a group 3 with 2 others, so I don't mind starting maybe, but please fill me in, the rest of the team if you feel like.
Will is nodding, so Will was probably in that team as well.
Yes. I think we were quite bad at time management, so we stuck with the first question for a long time. So maybe I can just start there. So we talked a lot about actually the connection between social science and other sciences, because one of the points was to learn social science. And as a social science myself, I found it quite interesting because I think good point for all the engineers to have it on agenda, but I think that this should be probably mutual direction kind of relationship. So I would say perhaps going towards inter/transdisciplinary education and projects would be actually way forward to really see this learning as a function of collaboration in a very inclusive and diverse research environment. But yeah, that's so that's one of the topics that we mentioned, and yeah, and I think one of the person on our team also mentioned that it's indeed it's not mainly a matter of being interested, because I think we believe the interest is there and people are really aware of that. This is where the socio-technical challenges really are. So a lot of calls are really for this kind of interdisciplinary research, for example, but often engineers don't know maybe how to go about it. And we also spoke about the practical challenges around, connecting different types of data and knowledges. And we also even tried to think about solutions. So we've been brainstorming a lot about this. And
all right.
Maybe will also fill me in here.
We have to stop. We've gone over 2 minutes already, and we're supposed to only have one. But thank you for the summary. Who else is in that group? Just quickly.
I was in this group, Sandrine.
Yeah.
Okay.
You've already got me there.
I already got you. Yeah, I already saw you smiling about that. Was anybody in group 4? There must have been one more group, because there's people who haven't said anything yet. Okay, Julia and Francesca and Hakan must have been in one group. They
were in my group.
Yeah. Oh, they were all in your group.
But there is some.
We were all in group 2.
Oh, so nobody was in group 4 or group 1. So we only had 2 groups, in fact.
There was one in group 5 writings.
Oh, that was us. Oh yeah, we can tell you our results as well. Yeah. So Paul and I and Jim ended up together because I don't know why, but and so we were quizzing Paul on it. I copied and pasted the recommendations. We were quizzing him on that, but basically he was giving us some advice about. So one of the main things that he said, well, quite a few important things for me. First of all, this idea of this unconscious bias training is a bit dangerous, because if you just send an external person in to give a training and then don't support that with more long-term activities, that can actually be a negative thing, because then people think they've had the training, but they still stop after a very short time. They stop actually using it. Also, that you have to take time. So it takes time to get people to understand and change their mindset, and we shouldn't give up if things don't work immediately. Yeah, and I know that the other thing is maybe we need more data for the wind energy area, especially science. So maybe the academy can do some surveys and get some actually more information in order to use that data to increase awareness. And then the final thing that Jim said was trying to get diversity to be a central part of everybody's activities rather than a thing on the side. That would be a really particular thing that I would like to push. So now we've got 2 minutes left. I guess we just stop now. I will somehow put everything that we discussed into a document and share it with you. My planned next steps were basically to say, I purposely made this discussion so that we didn't finish it, because I now want to encourage you to continue this discussion with us as part of the We Do Wind project. So you can sign up at this link here. And that just gets you access to this digital platform where you can share your experience and answer questions, but you can also take part in the monthly webinars. We're actually building up a database of existing resources, and I would be really happy, actually, especially Paul, if you could. I mean, you referred to quite a lot of stuff today. Can you send us a presentation or send us even some papers backing up what you were saying? Because I think that would be really good as a basis. And then we want to plan we're having some more events. So we're actually talking about all these different topics, including unconscious biases, but also measuring success more fairly, discussing existing activities in your organization, and then going on to talk about how wind energy can specifically identify some actions. And we also have a feedback form, which I'd really like you to fill in. So I'm going to send you this and ask you to do that. Oh yeah, I'm gonna stop now.
Sorry.
If people have got questions for Paul, then do you want to? I'll write your email address in the chat, and you can get in touch with him later. Otherwise, you can always write to me. Has anybody got a last question? Paul's gonna run off, but I can wait 1 minute. Does anybody have one last thing that they wanted to say or know? The time went by so quickly.
Thank you very much.
I'm late. I really must go, Sarah. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. No, I need to go as well.
Thank you so much for your
Okay.
presentation.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks very much.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.